Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the LLG2 podcast. I'm Frank Piccolo, and I'm here with Amy Austin. Mick Notaboom could not join us today. Mick had triple bypass surgery last week, so he is recovering. So we're going to hold the fort down. Mick, get better. Can't wait to have you back, bud.
Get better, Mick. We miss you. So we would like to say a big thank you to our sponsors for providing us with these beautiful slides to accompany our show today. So do you need to make a great presentation, but you're worried you don't have the skills or don't know where to start? You can create beautiful professional slides like these in little time with no money. So go to superslickslides.com and get started for free when you enter the promo code LLG2. So we're going to start out this week with the question of the week. And this week's question comes from Marguerite in San Francisco. Marguerite writes, "Hello, LLG2. I've been listening to your show for 3 years, and I'm a huge fan. I work for a rapidly growing technology company in Silicon Valley, and to support our growth strategy, we are preparing to hire 6 new customer success managers. Given that I am the only person who has been fulfilling the responsibilities of this position, our leadership has tasked me with creating online training courses for our new hires. I do not have any experience or formal training in learning and development, but I am eager to learn. After listening to your interview with Carol Dweck in episode 135, I immediately read her book Mindset and have watched some of her talks that I found online. I've also started taking a bunch of different online courses to get some ideas of what it could look like and what to avoid. While that has been helpful, I feel like I am just overwhelmed with information and I don't know where to start. Any suggestions for how to design an online class that will help our new hires now and in the future with learning so they can be successful in their position? P.S. I'm including the links to 2 of the courses that I found online that I've relied on most heavily so far. But before I get too far, I want to make sure I'm going in the right direction." And Marguerite does include the link for Course 1, which is called Coursera. It's done by Coursera, and it's called Learning How to Learn. Also, Course 2 is done by a guy by the name of Goldsmith, and he teaches a class called How to Make Good Leaders Get Even Better. So Marguerite, this is a great question, and thank you so much for listening. We have actually received a lot of similar questions recently, so we thought we should focus on this one just a little bit more than usual. So we did review the courses that you sent and decided to focus this entire show on this topic. So by the way, to our listeners, we will include the links to the classes in our show notes. So if you want to check it out, what we're talking about.
Yeah, thank you. Again, great question, Marguerite. I think we put together some stuff that'll be helpful. It'll certainly get you started, and it has some of the core principles you should know going into creating any kind of learning environment. I think the one important thing to keep in mind is that different learning often requires different methods. So some learning requires a more step-by-step approach. Some it's a little bit more about connection. So I wasn't sure exactly when you said we're training. I'm not sure if you mean you're training with technical skills or if you're talking about product or if it's a little bit more about competencies, behavioral competencies, soft skills. That's important to keep in mind, to be thoughtful about the type of learning you're doing. With that in mind, I think some of this stuff, it's fundamental to learning, and I think it'll be helpful. So let's jump in and look at the first.
So let's start with the basics. It's Malcolm Knowles' principle of learning. He has 6 principles that he talks about when adults are learning. And the first one is being self-directed. So you want to understand that most adults don't want people pushing things or ideas on them. So actively listen to them and figure out their learning style. You can create activities geared towards their learning style once you know what it is. Number 2 is existing knowledge. Adults come to the learning table with knowledge that they built throughout their lives. So they will have knowledge already when they come to learn. So use this when you're teaching. Number 3 is goal-oriented. So most of them are well experienced in the game of life, and they have the ability to achieve goals, set and achieve goals. So utilize activities that kickstart their problem-solving skills. Number 4 is relevancy-oriented. They want to learn about what they view as important in their lives. They will learn more if they believe it is a skill that they will utilize in their daily life or their job. Number 5 is practical. Give them a project that has real-world application. Help them see how it is useful to them. And number 6, they want to be respected. So show respect by listening to their ideas. Elicit their feedback. Use them to enhance the learning experience. And treat them as a colleague. So Frank, what do you think about the 2 courses Marguerite shared? Do you feel like they did a good job of incorporating these principles?
Yes, to some degree, at least. I mean, certainly both were self-directed, right? They were both online. You go online, you take the courses, watch the videos at your own discretion. Definitely had that part of it. I think, and what I liked, and I know you did, and Mick did as well when I spoke with him, Marshall Goldsmith really tied in the existing knowledge and the relevancy and practical. I mean, there were some things that I immediately did as soon as I watched the video, and I was able to apply in real life. And it certainly, he asked a lot of questions that helped me to think about and build on my existing knowledge to, how that ties in, or what that means. So I think that's, the important takeaway here, Marguerite, is to think about these principles and how you can incorporate it in any kind of classes or courses that you're going to create. Even though these people are taking training that they didn't necessarily sign up for and decide, I want to learn about this. In a way they did, but I guess indirectly. There are still ways for you to make it self-directed. Have them have a say in some of the activities or the way you go about learning. Giving that autonomy, adult learners, is huge, and it'll make a big difference. So the next thing, you certainly want to be mindful of and aware of people's learning styles. People have different learning styles. So when you're designing a course, it's important to use different methods to reach different learners. So this is a model from Kolb's learning cycle that you sort of use as a framework and a good way to think about the different type of learners. You have 4 different stages here in the learning cycle, and it's not necessarily a linear path in the sense of you start at one spot and you go through around. People have different natural inclinations towards different parts of the cycle. Concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, active experimentation.
Yeah, Kolb gives us a great model. So for example, people with the reflecting learning style like the lectures and reflecting on the information. My learning style is experiencing, which means that I best learn from being hands-on, moving, doing, experimenting, and exploring. So I like to learn that way.
Yeah, I think it's good to know your own learning style. That's a good point. It was just when you're thinking it, when you're creating and designing the courses. Again, there are different ways, and we saw this we certainly saw this in both of the courses that we watched. There are different methods for different people. So for the experience, yeah, like you said, the discussion forums, for example, certainly Coursera had that. It wasn't really that in the Marshall Goldsmith, but you could add comments. So I don't know if that would be considered. But that type of the experiencing and mine also imagining we'd like to get in there and conceptualize and bounce ideas off of people. And so what I liked, again, going back to Goldsmith here, this is where, I think of Mick when I think of some of the things that were in the Goldsmith videos, right? Doing. And, that's Mick. He's a doer. So when he gave the examples of paying the small amounts for the negative feedback or the feed forward or using the simple questions, right? This is somebody who, for active people that like to do things, you watch this video and you went and did something. And so think about that when you're designing these classes, right? So if you're trying to teach them about how to use a CRM system, right? You will have people that will want the job aid and will want to look at it and reflect. They'll want to watch you, or they'll have a lot of questions about it. Then you'll have people, and it's not everyone has elements of all of these. You'll have people that just want to get in and do it and try it. And at some point, everyone has to go through these stages, reflect a little bit, go into the CRM and push buttons. And how do you think that works? Or how do you think you would get the answer to this question? And try it and do it. And if they do it wrong, then that's part of the learning, right? Practicing, making progress. Finding ways to make that possible.
The one thing about the learning environment is that it's helpful if the learning environment is engaging and inviting. You can access the curious mind. One thing that I noticed about the two courses we watched is my favorite was Goldsmith's because his environment was nice. The background music playing was engaging, and his friendly attitude. He seemed relaxed and comfortable speaking. I liked the music in the background. His jokes that he told and his personal stories made me feel like he was interacting with me, which I really liked, and I was engaged. What were your thoughts on Goldsmith?
Yeah, I'm with you, and I thought the interesting thing for me was before watching these, and that's why I'm really glad you sent these, Marguerite. This was helpful. Before watching these, when I think of learning environment, I think of more live, right? Even if it's virtual, but I think of more of well, you're not really setting a learning environment for online courses. You can just go on and watch, right? It doesn't make a big difference. It's just not. I think of that anxious mind and all that is in live sessions, but I could definitely see what you're talking about. And Mick felt the same way. Felt really strongly about it was hard to really enjoy and get into and be curious in the Coursera course, or at least harder than the Marshall Goldsmith. I mean, he made you feel comfortable. The ambiance was good, and the learning environment was different. So I'm with you. I think that's important.
Awesome.
So metaphors and analogies. I'm sorry, Amy. Just this is I think a big part of the engagement, right? And finding ways to make the information stick. And this is about building on existing knowledge. This connects back to that principle. One idea of it is scaffolding. You may have heard, but you're building on existing knowledge and things you already know and helping it stick. So here's a good example from the Coursera course, is that these pictures stuck with me, right? This was an example of these two different modes of thinking. And I remember after thinking, going back to this picture, thinking, oh, okay, that's how we make the connections in your mind, right? And that was a good analogy. Now, I think this also reflects back to your point, Amy, about the learning environment, because in a way, this picture, like just the color of this background, it was hard. It's, in my opinion, horrible. It was painful. It was distracting, right? I mean, do you agree with that? Do you see what I mean?
I agree with you, Frank. It's just a little awkward here. The picture is distracting. You're kind of losing focus on the thought behind it. And so
right.
I think even in online courses, you need to be engaging. You need to really think about what it looks like. So
yeah, agreed.
So if you're interested, Marguerite, you may want to study some learning theories to gain more understanding. But the important thing to know about the learning theories is that they all intertwine and overlap like a big bowl of spaghetti. So you can't pull one out by itself. They all are intertwined. Any thoughts on that, Frank?
No, that's a great, I love this analogy, right? It's, there you go, perfect example. it's hard to pull out a single strand. And right now, it seems like that's how you feel. You're sort of overwhelmed with all these ideas and all these different methods, and it's a lot of stuff, right? And that's just how it is. And don't kill yourself to try to pull out one strand and it's got to be this way. Different methods, and hopefully, if anything, that came across in in this podcast is that different methods for different people, and different learning, and different methods for different learning. So it all overlaps. I think if you could keep it simple in the sense of start with the environment, you want to create that curiosity and openness, and try to eliminate any anxiety. People are going to be coming in with adult learners come in with anxious anyway. It's just our nature. Not to mention, these are new hires who want to impress you, want to show you that you made a good decision. Try to make the environment as engaging, as comfortable, and as playful as possible. Try to incorporate these principles, and I think in doing that will help with the environment, making it practical and building on existing knowledge, self-directed. Those things are really important. And be mindful of different learning styles. Have ways that people can interact. Have ways that people can get in and try and do and play and screw up and learn that way. And how people can reflect. I think you're on the right track. It seems like I love how thoughtful you're being about this up front and doing the work. Now it's time for you to maybe actively experiment and just get in and start doing.
Those are great points, Frank. Thank you, Marguerite, for your questions and being a fan. And thank you, everyone, for listening today. Frank and I would like to leave you with one thought. We heard this from a very great leader, and she taught us progress is perfection. So keep moving forward, keep learning, and keep striving for progress. Thanks,
That's
everyone.
great. That's great. Thanks, everyone.